Australian Aviation Podcast, the official podcast of Australian Aviation, unpacking the latest insights, developments and issues impacting Australia's aviation sector.
Hello everybody, my name is Adam Thorne and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. Now this week we have something of a crisis really, in that it has been a desperately quiet news week. In many ways we shouldn't even be recording this podcast, but we are not one to miss a deadline. Therefore, what I've decided we're going to do is simply talk more nonsense than usual. Also, in order to add to the kind of conversation, I've brought back a previous star of the Australian Aviation Podcast. Those of you watching on my YouTube, Soot, the Air Services rescue dog. He's always been the favourite member of my team. We just what's up? Soot says hello. Soot says hello. Mm-hmm. He's very calming as well, because basically what Air Services do is if there's like a younger person in distress or in a difficult situation, they give a rescue dog, they give Soot to put on the child's lap and they can just stroke him and it calms them down, which is working an absolute treat. In all the other scheme I've come up with to help get through this show is I've got Jake here to talk more nonsense than he normally talks. Hard to imagine. Jake, introduce yourself.
Hello, Adam. I wasn't aware that there was a nonsense quota.
There is a nonsense
quota. There's a nonsense quota.
But basically, normally we try to have some semblance of like an intelligence discussion. This might have to go out the window this week because there's very little to talk about. So you're going to have to take the bird as going.
Let's talk about nonsense. In fairness, we have been beavering away busily this week and over the past couple of weeks finalising the next issue of the Australian Aviation magazine.
Lovely link. Yes, we do. Yes, we have. So we can start off by talking about that. Jake, it's basically written, what we've done is we've packed Jake off home. I've gone work from home for the last couple of weeks, go home in peace and write some features. Inadvertently, what seems to happen is that Jake's actually written the entire magazine. So if you're not a fan of Jake's writing, it's going to be rubbish. But if you are a fan, you're in for a treat. Jake, tell us a little bit about some of the things you've been writing about.
Well, we've got a feature in there about Virgin, because Virgin Australia has had a very good few years since it exited administration. And so I take a bit of a dive into the rise of Virgin Blue, the fall of Virgin Australia, the administration, and the return from administration to the position that it's in today. With some expert commentary and quotes that have totally not been Frankenstein together from other stories that we've done in the past.
Oh, brilliant. Really, great. Really sell it. Yeah, he's smiling for those of you who can't see him.
I said they haven't.
That. We've all want to win a Walkies. He'd like to win a Walkies, wouldn't he? Yeah, he'd love that. He'd love that.
Walkleys.
They're Walkleys. I thought they were Walkies. Anyway.
No, he probably thought they were Walkies.
This is dross, isn't it? This is even worse and nonsense than it normally is.
You're the one setting low expectations here.
Well, I have to. I've got to prepare people for the fact not much has happened. We have to get through this. So I'm just letting them know, if you're not a fan of us just talking drivel, just go to your next, because going on those true crime podcasts, whatever it is people are listening to. Anyway,
I thought you're saying go to a true crime podcast. I thought you were saying that to people who aren't fans of drivel.
What? What do you mean? Explain that to me.
I'm saying that true crime podcasts drivel. Adam.
Are they really? I actually don't agree with true crime podcasts. It's got nothing to do with aviation, and this is a rant. I don't understand why people get their thrills out of listening to these kind of gruesome tales, because you're like glamorising something that's quite bad. So I'm actually not a fan of true crime podcasts. Anyway, we should probably attempt to go back to talking about Virgin. So the reason we're talking about this is that they will imminently-ish be launching their flights using Qatar aircraft to fly to Doha, which will therefore effectively allow Virgin Australian passengers to fly all around the world. Do we know when is it launching? It's in like a month or so, isn't it?
We don't know for certain.
We don't know the exact date.
But it is very heavily rumoured that that's what they're planning to do.
Right.
So good opportunity, we thought, to take a look at how they got here, especially considering where they were 5 scant years ago.
Yeah, so they effectively went under. They went into administration. They lost a lot of they lost aircraft. They particularly had I think 1 or 2 aircraft that were taken by Rex effectively via a leasing agreement. Now they've got those aircraft back. Now they've boosted their fleet. Now they've got proper long-haul flights happening again. Do you think, to sum this up, do you think Qantas have a reason to be worried that suddenly Virgin has got sort of teeth again?
It's an interesting thing because Virgin, of course, has pursued a strategy that is midway between the the low-cost carrier strategy employed by Jetstar and the premium strategy pursued by Qantas. So it's positioned itself in the middle. Now, of course, under Paul Scurrah and John Borghetti before him, Virgin was really chasing that premium carrier market that was putting it head-to-head with Qantas, and it had its own, dual brand strategy for a while with Tiger Air that it could never really make work. And so with Tiger Air gone, and since exiting administration, it's ditched all of its premium. It's ditched a lot of its premium carrier trappings, and it's sort of aiming for that middle section of the market. The people who maybe want a bit more of a bit of a nicer experience than Jetstar, but don't want to pay through the nose for the premium experience that Qantas might offer. So. Qantas and Jetstar still very much dominate the Australian aviation market, but I think Virgin is settled into its own comfortable niche, and it'll be interesting to see what it does once those wet lease Qatar flights get off the ground.
Yeah, so we've got big feature there looking at almost like the past, present and future of Virgin. We have got a look at a NASA balloon, which is actually very exciting. We've got some very nice photos from Avalon.
Including some that I took?
Yeah, it's including some that you took. So just before this, he's put all of the photos into a Google Drive and shared them with me. So by the magic of technology, we're going to put some of those in the magazine. You interviewed Matt Hall, didn't you?
I interviewed Matt Hall at Avalon, which was a very interesting interview because we did it as the F-35 display, I believe, was happening overhead. So periodically on the recording, Matt Hall will be talking. We just hear which made it an entertaining thing to listen back to. We've got that Q&A interview with Matt Hall about his career. We've got a look at major airport infrastructure projects.
Bloody love some infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
What kind of infrastructure are we talking about here?
So we're talking about Sydney's revamped T2 domestic terminal with new scanners, new check-in areas.
I love a scanner.
We've got the future Brisbane transformation program. We've got Perth moving everything to Airport Central. We've got the third runway at Melbourne Airport.
We've got some stuff about improved baggage carousels.
Improved baggage carousels.
I love a bit of baggage
we
carousel.
love baggage carousels. We've also got a smaller look at a couple of regional or smaller airports that are doing projects. We've got Hobart and Launceston down in Tasmania, and we've got Newcastle Airport here in New South Wales. We've done a shorter article on those as well. We have got something that we will probably touch on in a little bit, but what we can expect from the next term of the Labor government in terms of aviation, and we'll cover that in a bit more depth, I think, a little bit later on when we get to talking about the news, because there is a news item that sort of leads into that very nicely.
Yes. So go on. What are you going to say?
It's going to be an action-packed issue. And we are looking forward to getting it out the door so that I can unchain myself from my desk.
Getting back into the office.
Yeah.
So if you want to subscribe, go on our website, australianaviation.com.au. There's like a premium content thingy at the top. If you click on that, all the information comes up. I would say just finally, before we leave this little segment on the magazine, so we're obviously doing like an Avalon photo special, which will include photos from Jake. One of the photos, we spoke about this earlier, I want to include is a full page photo of a dog called Avalon that works for the RAF, and Avalon was being his own little puppy being trained at Avalon, basically. And what they were doing, they were showing the training to people. Do you think it would be acceptable to have a full page photo of Avalon, bearing in mind you've got Soot here?
Only if Avalon is being trained as a pilot.
That's horrible. Ain't
no rule says a dog can't fly a plane, Adam.
He says that's terrible. Soot doesn't like that. Soot thinks we should be allowed to put.
Well, no, hang on. Now, why would Soot disapprove of his kinfolk being accepted as full pilots in the pilot community? Why would Soot not want his fellow dogs to achieve their dreams of being pilots?
But we're not against that. In many ways,
haven't you ever seen that movie Air Bud?
No. What's Air Bud?
It's the movie about a dog playing basketball, but it should be about a dog who becomes a pilot.
Right. So just to recap, when I promised a load of drivel, we're now talking about a dog becoming a pilot. That's where we've gone to. And we're like 5 minutes into this drivel?
If a dog did become a pilot, that would probably be something we would cover on the website.
It would. It absolutely would. Yeah. It absolutely would. Right. Do we have any shout-outs or announcements before we attempt to talk about what little news there is?
Yeah. So I believe we have an apology from you, Adam.
Do we? Oh, God.
To a couple of good people, Connie and Ian Warburton from the Outback air race, I
Yes.
think, the wacky Warbos.
So basically, the Outback Airways, I can't say anything to do with this, right? The Outback Air Race is absolutely amazing. It happens every 2 years, and it's kind of like a time trial event where smaller aircraft and pilots basically fly around the Outback, and it happens every couple of years, raises money for a very, very good cause, and it's kind of like, it gets like husband and wives or small teams that get involved and do this. It's starting up soon. They've just confirmed they've got, I think, 40 aircraft or just over 40 aircraft this year. So obviously did a nice little shout out to it on the website. Now, I did get the names of, I believe it's previous year's winners incorrect. And
Yes.
those very lovely people did get in touch to correct me. Now, I should say, firstly, just to dodge the bullet here and throw that bomb elsewhere, that's because it was wrong in the press release. So whoever it is who did the press release, hang your head in shame. Nonetheless, I do, as a journalist, take full responsibility for everything I've written. So I would like to apologise. I would also say as well, the email we got was actually really, really nice, because normally I just get horrible passive-aggressive abuse. These people, despite the fact I'd messed up, were lovely. So thank you very much. It does mean the world. Could you please inform our readers of what I got wrong, and you're going to love this, and what the correct version is, just to wrap this up?
Yeah, so I believe you cited the names of the 2022 winners as Ian and Robin Warburton. The correct name was Ian and Connie Warburton.
All right, well, huge apologies for that, Connie, for getting your name wrong.
And Connie Warburton, by the way, if you're not calling yourself Super Connie Warburton, what are you even doing?
Right, we will, before we go on.
Lindsay, we have to give a shout out to Lindsay as well.
I was going to get to this. So basically, on Monday is a very special day because two people that work on the team, it is their birthday. The first is Lindsay. So Lindsay is our kind of super head of production, and she oversees everything. She oversees the words, she oversees the video, she oversees the audio. Basically, if you're doing anything multimedia, Lindsay oversees this. Lindsay is wonderful. She's a lovely Yorkshire lass, and she does an enormous amount of work. She's gone away to the UK, back home, back up north, for a few weeks. The whole place is going to hell in a handcart. It's falling apart. Standards have dropped. We miss you very much, Lindsay. It is your birthday on Monday. From the remaining just from me and Jake, basically, happy bloody birthday.
And from Jacob the Pending, and from the Terrible Damon.
The Terrible Damon, yeah, the whole team, and from Sit as well. Sit says hello. There he goes, raising his paw. Have a happy birthday. It's also somebody else's birthday. A very important member of the team that talks a lot of nonsense. It is the birthday of Jake Nelson. Jake, tell us a little bit more. What are you doing on your birthday? Firstly, how old are you?
On Monday, I will be turning 33.
Oh, that really? I thought you were older than that. 33?
33.
33.
The beard adds 10 years.
Yeah. Right, so you're turning 33. What have you got planned for your birthday? You know you get your birthday off as well, by the way. You get birthday day off, so you can have that day off if you want.
Well, it might be a bit difficult, Adam, because I believe I'll be delivering a special report on the inaugural flight of Air New Zealand's first 7879 Dreamliner.
You will indeed. So that is exactly what you're going to be doing. I was more thinking, because we'll talk about that after you've done it, have you got anything like the day before, the day after, someone buying you a cake? Am I going to have to step in and get you a cake?
In the evening of that day, once I get back from Brisbane, assuming that I get back in time, I will be attending a concert of sea shanty band The Longest Johns.
What? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is your regular. Do they have like a special birthday sea shanty?
Well, no. It's first of all, at normal shanty club, when it is someone's birthday, we don't sing Happy Birthday because that's a dirge. We sing Auld Lang Syne, and everyone sings the version of Auld Lang Syne that they know, which makes it wonderfully chaotic because there are several different ways to sing it. But this is a shanty band called The Longest Johns. They are based in Bristol. And they are doing an Australian tour.
But Bristol in the UK?
No, Bristol on Mars.
I don't know, you smart ass. There's a Newcastle in Australia. That's ridiculous. Probably is also a Bristol in Australia. So, you know, so they've flown over from His Majesty's United Kingdom, the Green and Pleasant Lands. Are they like a big deal in the shanty world?
Yeah, they're pretty big. They've put out a few albums. They're one of the more well-known shanty bands.
Yeah.
So they are doing a concert, a tour. They're doing a tour here in Australia, possibly also New Zealand. And they're doing their Sydney show on my birthday. So assuming I get back from Brisbane in time, which I hope I do because I prepaid for the tickets, I will be going with my lovely fiancée to see The Longest Johns live in concert.
That's really cool. That's a good birthday. That's a DC birthday. Well, on behalf of the Australian Aviation audience, I wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you. And by the
Go
way,
on.
if anyone in our audience
Wants to send in presents.
wants to send me a birthday present, there is one thing that I'm missing. At Avalon Air Show, CASA had a booth.
Oh my God.
CASA had a booth at the air show where every day they were handing out a different pin. They had like a drone and a helicopter and a plane. And I asked Adam.
Yeah, we were preoccupied.
On the Friday.
There was a major aviation incident.
In the evening.
Yeah, all right. I was busy. All right, go on. Yes, so what do you know?
I asked Adam to because I wasn't there on the Friday to
Yeah.
fetch me the CASA pin from the CASA booth on the Friday, which I believe was a hot air balloon.
Right.
Now Adam, for whatever reason,
Why do we keep bringing me into it? We've already dumped me.
Because I asked you nicely.
Yeah.
Adam did not manage to pick up
No.
that pin from the Friday, the hot air balloon pin, which means that my set is lamentably incomplete. So if anyone out there has a spare CASA hot air balloon pin, if anyone from CASA, for example,
I
is
think it's
listening,
probably- yeah.
I believe it was the hot air balloon that was the one that was given out on the Friday. Please send it to us at Australian Aviation and we will give you a lovely shout out on the podcast.
Okay, welcome back. So we talked more nonsense there than seems bearable. We should at least attempt to talk about what little news there is. Jake, tell me what's coming up first.
Well, we should probably first cover the election, of course, was not this weekend just gone, but the weekend before that. But it's taken a while for the dust to settle and for Anthony Albanese, the returned Prime Minister, to announce his cabinet. And big congratulations to Catherine King, the Minister for Transport Infrastructure, who has kept her portfolio.
You actually had a really good headline that you came up with for this news story. Dazzle our audience.
Yeah,
with
King keeps transport crown.
It's good, that one. It's good. Yeah. Am I meant to talk about this, seeing as I wrote the story, or are you going to talk about
Yeah,
this?
you can talk a bit about Catherine King keeping her job.
Yeah, so basically, as we record this now, the Labour majority, I think, is up to 93. I know it's like
it's definitely in the 90s.
Yeah, it's definitely in the 90s. I know there's a whole thing of it takes like weeks to actually do the count, but it looks like Labour have got 93. So they've got...
Which I think is bigger than what Tony Abbott got in his... 2013.
Yeah, so from what I gather, in Australian terms, this is like a super majority.
It's a landslide.
This is a landslide. They've absolutely wiped the floor with the opposition, which is good news for Labour. But what this has kind of meant is that it's changed the composition of the Labour Party, and it's involved a couple of kind of senior ministers who've lost their jobs. So obviously there was speculation that the more kind of junior senior ministers, almost, if that is a thing, would also be swept up in the reshuffle. Catherine King seems to have kept her head down and kept her job, which is probably a positive thing, given that it feels like she's done more for aviation than a transport minister's done in an awful long time, with the Aviation Green Paper and the Aviation White Paper. And this idea that they're going to introduce like an ombudsman in order to give more rights to passengers if your flight is delayed or cancelled through a fault of the airline. So she took on this very big project basically to map out the future of aviation to 2050. So it means that what this kind of means is she's going to be allowed to finish the job and allow these things to actually come to fruition. If we'd have had another government, there was obviously a chance these things could have been scrapped or changed. She dodged the bullet because Ed Husick, who was the science minister, was a kind of most high-profile casualty. And because of the makeup of how many left and right-wing, and I might get this a little bit wrong, I'm not as familiar with politics, UJ, because of the makeup of how many left and right-wing MPs there are, he had to make way for somebody else on the more left wing of the party.
I don't pretend to understand Labour factional politics.
No. Right. So anyway, he had to kind of make way. He kind of went out having a bit of a go at Richard Miles, who's Deputy Prime Minister. Miles? It's not, I called him Miles.
Yeah, no, Stephen Miles was the former Premier of Queensland. Miles is
Yeah. Maybe I'm probably just saying it in the King's English, though, so I might well be saying it right, and you're just saying like, oh, yeah, Mars. I say Miles.
Yeah, but it's not. It's MARLES.
Oh, whatever. Anyway, so basically the big thing is that Catherine King has kept her portfolio. So do we know what the progress is? I don't want to put you on the spot here, of this kind of like ombudsman and stuff, because all of this stuff is kind of going through the sort of phase where they are.
I think there's been like, interim people holding the position. I don't know if I don't believe anyone permanent has been selected yet. There was a draft Charter of Customer Rights that was sort of put out at the end of last year for comment. That's being kicked around. One interesting thing is Bridget McKenzie, the opposition transport spokesperson. She had been talking about, she had been, I think, a champion for this this concept of pay on delay, an EU-style compensation scheme for airlines. So if something happens to delay your flight or cancel your flight and it was within the airline's control, then they would have to pay the customer some compensation. over and above a refund. And Bridget McKenzie was a big champion of pay on delay, which is something that the Albanese government had opposed. And so there was a committee, and the Labor senators recommended that the bill not be passed. So the coalition had been pushing that, which is not a typical coalition. Normally, you'd expect Labor to be maybe pushing a bill like this to whack the big airlines, and the coalition to be opposing it. But it was Bridget McKenzie and the coalition who were trying to push this bill, and Labor who was opposing it, which is interesting. But that presumably might have gotten another look in if Bridget McKenzie had become the transport minister, and if the coalition had won government. It may yet, if voices get louder and outcry gets louder. But at this stage, pay on delay looks like it might be dead in the water, or the air, as it will. It'll be interesting to see what changes are made to that Charter of Customer Rights. It's been open for feedback. I'm not sure if the feedback has closed already. We've also got some other priorities that the government is probably going to be looking into. We've got Western Sydney Airport, for example, which is slated to open at the end of next year. The Labor government has been a big backer over the past 3 years of Western Sydney International Airport, kicking in a lot of federal funding. It is going to be it's going to be a government-owned airport.
You love that, don't you?
I do. I love public infrastructure being in public hands. This is my. I'm flexing my hands here because apparently mine
looks really weird. If for those of you not watching on YouTube, you'll be glad you would have got the audio.
Apparently, my hands are public hands now.
God.
But I like public infrastructure being in public hands, but it's going to be a government-owned airport as opposed to the privately owned Kingston Smith Airport, which is Sydney's main airport. There's the Melbourne Airport rail link, so that is going ahead basically as planned. Another interesting thing is that the coalition had announced before the election that if they got up, they were going to rip a whole bunch of money out of the suburban rail loop and pump a portion of that into the Melbourne Airport rail link. Interestingly, they were also going to cancel a couple of $2 billion that was set aside for upgrades to Sunshine Station, which Labor immediately swatted down by pointing out, well, hang on, Sunshine Station is going to be where the rail link connects to the rest of the network, so why would you be cancelling those upgrades? But I think the Victorian Labor government has now sort of put out an announcement that there's going to be more money from their level being pushed into the rail link, into the upgrades to Sunshine Station. There's the Sydney Airport slot management that has been given now to Airport Coordination Limited, which is this foreign outfit that's come in and displaced the previous slot manager, Airport Coordination Australia. They're owned by a consortium of overseas airlines, and they've done a lot of work with airports overseas, including I think Heathrow and Dubai. So they're going to be taking over they've taken over as of the 1st of April, I believe, for a contract that's going for the next 3 years. So whether that contract is going to be renegotiated at the end of those 3 years, I would suppose, would depend upon how it goes.
There's probably like a pun there about like a slot machine and stuff.
It probably.
Yeah. But one of the things they said as well is that they've committed to being like fully transparent. So it's actually, we're going to have a system where you will actually be able to kind of check out and see, which slots have been taken, which haven't. And so the argument is that one, this would stop any slot hoarding if people do think that slot hoarding is going on, and airlines would argue it isn't. But then secondly as well, it kind of like, it keeps everyone honest. So the idea is if you have this in place, then you stop these things happening. And also from the airline's point of view, it kind of proves their innocence, if that is what you're believing. It's saying, we can prove that actually this isn't what's going on. Yeah, cool. Right.
And of course, one big thing that the government has been involved in regards to aviation that we cannot forget is Rex.
Like Sit Lights that. He loves that.
Well, Rex is probably the name of one of his mates.
Probably is.
So, of course, the government, before the election, floated the idea that as a buyer of last resort, if EY Australia cannot find a commercial buyer for Rex, the government is looking at ways to step in and nationalise the airline. Love public infrastructure in public hands.
Me too.
But that's my opinion. So this was something that was, I believe, criticised by the coalition, and now that Labor has got back in, we can presume that should EY again fail on its second round of talks to try and find someone to pick up Rex, we can assume that the Labor Party will hold to its promise, or we can hope that the Labor Party will hold to its promise. Or at least Rex might hope that the Labor Party would hold to its promise of picking up and running the airline itself.
The problem in all of this, though, is that what they've said is that, yes, they would pick up the airline, but with a view to eventually selling it. So eventually they'd be a caretaker for a number of years. The reason why EY cannot get a buyer is because their fleet is very, very, very old. I think the last time we checked, half of their fleet is basically grounded. This is because they are struggling to get hold of the parts and the maintenance for an aircraft, which effectively it's just so old, but it's very hard to get hold of these things anymore. So in order to sell it, what they're going to have to do at some point is buy some new aircraft. This is easier said than done because there is like a global shortage of all aircraft. And even if they were to somehow get their hands on one, they're going to be very, very, very expensive. Now, it's one thing for them to take public ownership of it, but would it be a good look for public funds to be spent on a new fleet of aircraft in the hope that maybe they will be able to find a buyer? I mean, if they do find a buyer, what happens if that buyer essentially doesn't pay that much money for it? So they're kind of damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. There was an element, I think, that they kicked this into the long grass to get this, they made this kind of promise, but this was kicked, well into the future after the election. At some point in the next maybe 6 months or so, they're going to have to take a decision as to whether they do take ownership of it, and then they're going to have to take another decision as to whether they actually expand that fleet. Needless to say, there will be a lot of public scrutiny on that. The issue they've got, of course, is that these are essential flights. These flights cannot stop. You cannot, cut off, business people in these regional remote towns need to get flights. You've obviously got, from the purposes of the medicals and things, people need to be able to fly in and out quickly. It's just something that has to happen. So the government at some point is going to be faced with a dilemma, which is going to get a huge amount of attention.
So, of course, once the government, if it does pick up Rex, as we say, it will need to expand the fleet and replace the fleet, and hopefully it does. The other thing is we've had, of course, the other regional airlines saying, well, why would you prop up a failing business? Let Rex die. We'll step in and take over these routes. We're ready to go on a bunch of routes. And so the argument from these other regional carriers like Skytrans and Hinterland is we need to know what's going to happen so that we can plan if we're going to take over these routes. We can do it, but we need to be sure that we'll have to do it. And they don't want to be they don't want to be faffing around, waiting. That's a wonderful word, faffing, isn't it?
It is. Did I introduce the word faffing?
It's one of the English people's few worthy contributions to the English language.
Faffing is good. Blimey, I like that.
Yeah, blimey. There's probably some others, but getting back to the topic at hand, they don't want to be faffing about waiting for, is the government going to buy Rex? Is it going to let it fold? What's happening with Rex? And, they don't want to be competing with the government, they would say, on these routes.
So there's two sides to this story. You've got the smaller, or Rex's rivals, effectively. He will rightly feel this is an insult to competition. It's like if the government had come in and bought Simple Fly, and we'd be rightly furious if they bought our opposition. So they've every right to think that this is just not fair. But from a government's point of view, it's all very well and good these rival airlines kind of saying that they're going to come in only if Rex goes under. They don't necessarily know for a fact they're going to do that. They don't necessarily know whether they would be able to serve the same frequency that Rex do. So they are kind of in this difficult kind of balancing act. The likelihood is, if Rex disappeared tomorrow, some of the more profitable routes would be taken over immediately. Some of the least profitable routes might well be ignored entirely. So it's not just as simple as that. The other airlines, though, might say, would it not be more fair to give us a bit of money so we can get some aircraft so that we can move in there, rather than just setting up a rival which is horribly anti-competitive?
And another thing to consider as well, on the flip side from what the airlines are saying is, the government might turn around and say, well, Rex is already flying these routes. We don't know for sure. You are saying endlessly that you could take over these routes. We don't know for sure that you could do it. Rex is already doing it.
Yeah.
if we buy Rex, we can be 100% certain that we can make Rex keep doing this.
Yes, and all these regional towns need certainty. We padded it out, if we're honest, talking about the kind of the years to come under Labour.
He's bringing down expectations again.
He's bringing down expectations. Look, I reckon this could be the worst show we've ever done. I think this is dross. Can you think of a worse show we did? No. We've done some
we've
rubbish
got a big
as well.
catalogue.
We've done a lot of dross, but this is abysmal. Go on.
So one thing that came out of air services over
this
the
is where
past few
Soot
days.
comes in. Say hello, Soot.
Yeah, so look, Soot came down. Soot
I'll
came
put
to
him in.
life as a magical talking dog.
Of course he did.
And came down and told Adam that Australia last month recorded its best day for passenger flights in 5 years.
It certainly did, and that makes it very happy, doesn't it?
If you're not watching YouTube, he has been holding the dog up to his ear this whole time.
Soothing.
I don't know what's worse, me doing these hands or him continually having the dog talk to him.
What I've decided is we're actually going to, because Soot's been basically in this like shelving unit, which is now no longer in shot. That's very cruel. So I think what I want to do is take him down to the office, and I think he's going to stay at my desk now for the foreseeable future. He's had enough time up here, haven't you, mate? Yeah, he wants to come down with us. Anyway, so basically, air services do, is it like a quarterly or monthly?
It's a monthly report.
It's a monthly report, which basically looks at how many aircraft are in the air and is able to use all of its kind of...
And, delays and things like that.
Yeah. And so because they effectively are the people monitoring everything, you are getting the most kind of accurate, up-to-date data. One of the things that they noticed is, I think it was April the 17th or something
April
like that.
the 17th.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I remembered. There was the busiest day of passenger flying post-COVID. So we're actually seeing a real improvement. But interestingly, it was only a kind of sliver away from the best ever day pre-COVID. So what that shows that after 5 years since the start of COVID, or whatever it's been, 3 years or whatever since it's ended, we're finally getting to the point where aviation can say it has fully recovered. We're not quite there yet. So the big challenges for aviation is, even though the international aviation has picked up, domestic aviation still has issues, we believe at least, and it's hard to get a perfect breakdown, with less business flights than we had before. And that's kind of a combination of a kind of cost of living crisis, and also that people now, most meetings now happen via video link. So there's less need to necessarily go and fly and meet somebody. So those are the issues that they're dealing with. Also, just more generally, it's an incredibly unstable time in the world. So aviation would have hoped to have been back to normal long since before now. But what air services data is showing is that we're kind of crawling there. I think as well, they found 2 out of the 4 largest airports in the country are now surpassing pre-COVID.
I believe so.
Yeah, so they are getting there, basically.
And another thing as well, by the way, the industry as a whole, says Air Services, has achieved 2 consecutive months of the highest on-time performance in 3 years.
Despite the fact, we do.
Despite Tropical Cyclone Alfred.
Yeah, despite...
We could see more stiff competition for the Huey, which has been dominated by Virgin for the past few months.
Yeah, we could see. Right, has we got anything else to talk about? What's up now?
A brief thing that you covered.
Oh, no, I don't have to talk about anything.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that you covered. Apparently, a Qantas passenger saw sparks flying out of an A330 in December?
Yes, so this was the preliminary report, the ATSB report. So just to give you some background, the ATSB essentially are the kind of organisation who are our air crash investigators in Australia. And they often work on these kind of bigger, more in-depth cases, sometimes for years. But what they usually try and do within sort of 3-6 months is do a preliminary investigation. And what they've basically found is that this engine issue that they had was first spotted by a passenger. So the passenger sat there looking out the window and had actually seen these sparks fly out quite a long way out of the engine. Thank God that wasn't Ben. he would have been a broken man. Anyway, so this passenger has spotted this. And also the passenger has, we believe, taken photos and videos, and actually very good on the passenger, has alerted the crew. The crew have then gone and made a kind of turned back. I think it was an LA to Brisbane flight. So the crew is going to have to go and turn the aircraft around. Actually, full credit to the crew who handled the whole thing really well. They kind of landed it, flying the engine on idle. Touchdown, everyone was absolutely fine. But as part of this investigation, the ATSB has released this kind of image, this sort of horrifying image showing the sparks coming out. I believe off the top of my head, the engine was replaced and the aircraft was grounded for a while, but nonetheless a pretty terrifying thing to see if you're on an aircraft. It also does show, as we say this every week, how well prepared crew pilots are for these kind of incidents. 99% of their training, I may be exaggerating, but kind of 99% of all of their training is in the unlikely event things go wrong. And even though things can look slightly terrified if you're there, everybody is very well prepared. There's all sorts of procedures they followed. So the whole thing in the end was worked out okay. But this is only a preliminary report. We'll find out a few more details when the final report comes out, maybe in a year or so's time.
Yeah, and speaking, by the way, of aviation safety in America,
you're
going
to rant, aren't
We'll
you?
stop talking about America at some point, but what's going on in America?
He's looking the other way.
Seriously, what's going on over there? I mean, you've got... I
don't want to talk about it either.
So many it's aviation. The New York Times has just had the headline "Airport Chaos."
Yeah,
I mean. Failures twice at Newark Liberty International Airport, which is one of the major airports serving New York City. That is, blackouts that have left air traffic controllers kind of scrambling to control flights without the system that lets them control flights.
Is there one person in America that we could potentially pin this on? One person that you would hold accountable for these mistakes?
I hold several people accountable. Their names rhyme with Bonald Grump.
Nonsense, gun.
Leon Husk.
Yeah.
And Dawn Shuffy. But we've had, airplanes bumping wings in San Francisco and Washington, D.C., numerous aborted landings at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, including on one occasion because an Army helicopter was flying nearby. This was, only a couple of months after that fatal collision near Washington Airport that killed 67 people. So, commercial aviation in America, it seems to be a basket case at the moment. And, there's a few things that can be attributed to. Yes, there is aging technology. There is antiquated technology that is holding up. That is hampering the ability of air traffic controllers to do their jobs. Now, that's not the current administration's fault, but if they're doing a whole bunch of layoffs at the FAA, which they have been doing, chances are they're going to lay off a few of the people whose jobs it is to maintain these aging systems while a replacement can be found. They are looking for a replacement, but will they be able to get one in fast enough before something else happens? Another thing is that, and this is a problem that's been happening the world over, there aren't enough air traffic controllers.
Yes.
There are not enough air traffic controllers in the US. There were not enough air traffic controllers in the US before the Trump administration came back for its second go. But layoffs probably are not helping.
And the issue with this, just to jump in here, with air traffic controls, it sounds really obvious, but you don't necessarily think about it. This is a hugely specialised position. So you need people that have a real passion for aviation in order to take this on. You can pay what you want. You're only going to have so many people that want to do that. And secondly, training for this is a very specialised thing. You need to train people up initially. Obviously, every single air traffic control centre is slightly different. So it's not the case you just hire somebody and they start on Monday. This is the problem we had with Air Services Australia in Australia, kind of during COVID, in terms of there was an issue. Supposedly, there was arguments both ways of a kind of a lack of air traffic controllers, and Air Services made the point it's just not as simple that you can turn a tap on and off. It takes a long time to train.
And to the credit of Air Services, they have been ramping up their recruiting efforts. They're trying to get in more air traffic controllers. They're hiring as many air traffic controllers as they can. It just takes a while to train them, and there's only a certain subset of people, as we know, that have the aptitude to become an air traffic controller in the first place.
Yeah. So this is one of the issues that the US is now dealing with. Yeah, because as well, if you're taking air traffic controllers from abroad, then you've got to go through migration concerns, all that kind of stuff. So it's not always easy. Particularly as well, one of the issues that Air Services had is you may have enough people overall, but do you have enough people in certain specialised kind of sub-positions? Yeah. It's all a very, very difficult juggling act. The public don't necessarily realise how important this is, but it's a similar thing with maintenance professionals. We always think of the pilots, but if you haven't got any traffic controllers, if you don't have any maintenance staff, the aircraft can't take off.
Yeah. So, commercial aviation in America is a bit of a mess. Military aviation, how do you lose?
It's bad, isn't it?
How do you lose 3 fighter jets from one aircraft carrier in the space of a few weeks? How does that happen?
Yeah,
where are they going? I know where they're going, into the ocean, but how are they getting there?
So I think I read is like an F-35 now will cost well over $100 million you $100 million, right? It's a lot of money to lose.
Yeah, I don't think they're F-35s. I think they're sort of older planes, but still.
Just to be clear, but to give you a comparison, that's how much these things cost. And actually, the cost of fighter jets have gone up exponentially over the last few decades. But anyway, they're a really expensive piece of kit. In the US Air Force, in the US Navy, the joke they make is that when a pilot has to eject, they're giving it back to the taxpayer. You can kind of understand that if it's during a war situation or if it's during an exercise. Obviously, you prioritise the human being over the aircraft, and when they buy the aircraft, they do kind of factor in that you are going to lose some. Nonetheless, when you've got situations where aircraft are basically rolling off the boat, that's bad, isn't it? It's like basically nobody put the handbrake on. It's nonsense.
Look, you know what's the problem? They don't have Bunnings in America, so they can't get the octopus straps. They can't get the Oculus straps to secure the planes. That'd sort them out.
Yeah, you'd like to think, I don't know what we can't say the real world for telling off, but you'd like to think whoever was responsible for that would get one, and also 3 of them as well. You think the time you lose one, you're like, guys, is someone checking the Bunning straps? But
it's once as the old saying is once as happenstance, twice as coincidence, 3 times as enemy action, but 3 times could just as easily be rank incompetence.
Yeah.
We don't know. And of course, another story about US aviation is that Donald Trump is apparently getting gifted a $400 million plane.
No. So we had an argument on the company Google Hangouts group, which is full of arguments and whatever. And basically, you had a little ding dong with Steve because you were like, "This is disgraceful. There's no integrity." Blah blah blah. And I do see your point, but Steve made the very good point. But they are struggling to get hold of Boeing 747s. So if a airline is going to go as a gift, here's a big.
It's not an airline. It's a government.
Yeah.
It's the government of the royal family of Qatar is handing Donald Trump a multi-million-dollar plane, which is going to be served, and after it serves as Airport One, it's going straight into his presidential library, which could mean he can keep using the damn thing.
That's all right. You would not turn that down. If a Qatari royal family, very unlikely, admittedly, was huge fan of a show, would you like your own aircraft just to hop about in? You're not going to turn that down, are you? I don't really know what he's doing wrong.
Yes, I would turn it down because, among other things, where would I keep it?
So Rob was telling me, occasional guest on this show, works for Defence Connect primarily. Apparently, it's on the way. I don't know. I've not verified that myself.
Trump has confirmed that he is taking the plane.
Good.
No,
save him a taxpayer some money.
It's blatantly a bribe from a foreign government and probably stuffed to the gills with listening devices.
No, it won't. They'll get people. They'll get the Secret Service, or whatever, to go and swat it for.
Trump, the world's least patient man, is going to have his flying palace gutted and spend months and months and months on the ground being checked for listening devices when he could be flying around in his flying palace, which is how it has been described.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think also somebody offered the RAF, if they went, here's a big aircraft you can just have in top condition. I think we should.
Yeah, the RAF is one thing.
Yeah, but the RAF effectively are operating the flights on behalf of Albanese and stuff when he's flying around and what have you. So
it's just and the fact that it's going to his presidential library foundation afterwards, directly afterwards, the next president, whoever it is, isn't even going to get to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is coming after his sons have been negotiating major real estate deals in Qatar. It's not a good look. If the government of China said to Donald Trump, Mr. President, here's a brand spanking new plane that we happen to have lying around. By the way, about those tariffs.
Yeah.
That would be seen as blatant quid pro quo, would it not?
Well, so I want to tell you a story, which I shouldn't tell you because I'll probably get into a lot of trouble. But during my days working at men's lifestyle magazines, we were so corrupt in terms of the freebies. It was disgusting. The worst thing we did, because what we did, we got so cocky, we just call up companies and be like, "Can you send us this stuff? We just want this." We weren't really writing about it. We're just basically just like, I want something for free. We got it. And the World Cup or the Euros or whatever was on, and we decided that what we needed was a 40, 50-inch TV in the office. So we called up, I think it was Sony or something, and we're like, for the World Cup, could you send us the biggest, flashiest, most modern TV you've got? Obviously, they're like, yes, of course. And we're like, oh, yeah, we're mentioning it in the magazine, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, a few days later, this enormous thing turns up, and it was so smart back then. You could talk to it and it would do stuff, which back then was revolutionary. So you'd be like, oh, could turn on, turn off, change channels and what have you. It was amazing. So obviously we had this. We did actually watch the World Cup on it. And then we were like, at this point, we need to organise. And they were going to arrange to take it back as well. They would have sent a courier. So we're like, we could send it back, or we could personally keep it, which after a lot of moral discussion, we decided was the right pathway forward. So what would happen? No, what we did is we bundled it into Mitch, the art director's like van or whatever, and drove it back home. And he's still got it in his home now. I went round his home a few years ago, and I swear to God, he's like, Mitch, I love you. Anyway, the problem we had is that Sony weren't particularly happy about this. So Sony would just keep calling
I can imagine.
Yeah, so they're like, where's our like £3,000 TV? And I was the one that had to be like, oh, you're cracking up, mate. You're from Sony. Oh, sorry. Just kept putting the phone down. So they may still be hunting for that TV. They may still be hunting for me. But having essentially engaged in the kind of shenanigans that the Don is engaged in, I don't feel I could criticise him. I don't feel, because it's
maybe they might be looking for a new press secretary sometime in the next 4 years. I don't know.
I'd love to go work for the US government administration. That'd be hilarious.
Moving on from America, one more brief story that you covered.
God, I don't want to talk about anything. Go on.
Joycey's got a memoir coming out, apparently.
Yes, he does. The Maestro. He's going to be back. So previously, there have been two kind of unauthorised biographies. One was by Peter Harbison. He was kind of like the head or the most senior person at Kappa, and he used to present all the Kappa conferences. We had him on our podcast to talk about his book, which kind of charted, I think this was shortly after he just left the airline, that kind of charted his kind of career history. But also when he was talking about it, he took a very kind of unbiased view of it. And what he kind of said of Joyce's time was, sure, he made mistakes and he was quite ham-fisted sometimes in terms of how he presented himself to the public. But ultimately, he made some very necessary changes and he also made some very shrewd things. And you could make an argument that that Qantas would not have, maybe not necessarily not have survived COVID, but would never have come out in as rude a health as it had if he hadn't have made the changes he made, not just during COVID, but during his whole time there. So he took this kind of philosophical view almost that you've got to take, or holistic view. You've got to look at the bigger picture of Alan Joyce. And then also there was Joe Aston, the kind of superstar columnist from the AFR, which is a little bit of more of a not an attack, because I think he was quite a little bit unbiased, but he was a guy that was doing all the digging into the kind of a chairman's lounge and more broadly looking at the kind of the culture at Qantas or whatever. So they were broadly negative ones, but we've not heard from the man himself. In fact, he's done virtually no interviews for this at all.
Alan, if you're listening.
Oh, we're going to get to that. I'm going to absolutely kiss his arse in a minute. It's coming. Right, so basically what we've heard is that Joyce has got this like new like superstar agent or something, I think the AFR called it. And they're talking quite openly now that they are touting around this book to publishers. It will be a massive success. You could make a very good argument that not only was Alan Joyce easily the most famous kind of business personality in the country by a long, long way, he was genuinely one of the most famous people in the country, full stop. Like if you went up to the average person, you said Alan Joyce, they all knew Alan Joyce is the CEO of Qantas. There's almost never been an airline exec, I can't think of one almost globally, really, that's ever like transcended an industry like that. Maybe only Richard Branson in the UK. You can't think of many where he was just genuinely a household name, also a big character. I would be fascinated to hear his account of what happened. I reckon he's a right gossip. I reckon it'll be full of little tidbits. He'll settle some scores. Anyway, what he really needs to do is come on the Australian Aviation podcast, because, you know, all of these viewers, listeners, whatever they are, we are all potential buyers of the book. So if you want to go to any market, pretty much everyone that listens to this podcast is going to buy the book, which means I think we should get Alan Joyce on the podcast. Sit down here, we can flip to see who gets the honour of, or maybe we'll both do the honour of interviewing him, the maestro.
We could good cop, bad cop it.
Big cop, bad cop it. I'm not sure you'll be able to sit on this one, Sit. No, Sit won't be able to sit on this. But actually, to be fair, if you do come on the podcast, you can hold Sit. You can give him a stroke.
Is there any greater incentive?
He wants nothing more than to be on Alan Joyce's lap for about an hour. Anyway, Alan Joyce, if you are listening, you do want to come on the show. We ask this every other week. We'd love to have you, the maestro. Right, that's probably all the time we've got. We'd actually, how long have we been going on this show?
Yeah,
an hour. An hour of absolute
nonsense. A little
bit.
bit. I think we started a bit after the hour.
No, it's still probably good. We've got 45 minutes of total and utter drivel. I can't believe we got away with that. Anyway, we will be on the show. We will be back next week to talk a little bit more semblance of it. Hopefully, if there is some news, we want news. Send us a press release. Send us anything.
We do like news.
We do like news, yeah.
And look, if I can just, one personal shout out, one personal congratulations to a person who is very special in my life. My lovely partner has landed a traineeship with New South Wales Health. She'll be working in a hospital, doing her dream job in a pathology lab. I just wanted to personally congratulate her on the podcast, because she is so good at what she does and so talented, and it is a privilege, Adam, to know her.
Oh, that's really nice. That is really nice. I don't know what I'm made up. That is so lovely. And he's actually grinning.
And babe, if you're listening, could you please hang the washing?
I can't believe he said that. All right, we're going to end the show now. Jake, say goodbye.
See ya.
We'll be back on the show this next time. Same time next week, but for now, from me and Jake, goodbye.
Goodbye.